The Witcher 3 is one of those pieces of media that falls into two different extremely vocal audience categories for the most part. Some call it the best game ever made, some call it an overrated garbage. But the majority of people naturally liked the game. It was one hell of a step up compared to the last games. It was so good that nobody cared about the fact that it was the third title of its franchise. It was easy to pick up, so easy to understand the lore and intentions of the characters. After all, a fictional world would only make sense to humans if it had really close ties to the circumstances of their own societies, right? It had everything humanity craves for. A representation for every beautiful or foul thing within ourselves. From sex, drugs and violence to the goodness of our own inherent virtue. The evil, the lesser evil, and a steep price of sacrifice for people who would never appreciate the one who saved them. From the stories of betrayal, blind loyalty, love, hate and anything in between, to racism and otherizing everything strange. The story and the characters of The Witcher is everything that The Witcher 3 did right. So if you clicked on this video to watch me criticize this game for their masterpiece of a writing, I'm sorry mate, but you're deeply mistaken. And for those of you who would find the title offensive to your most favorite game, I have played through The Witcher 3 16 times by now. I've beat the game on Death March, Ghost Mode, Enhanced Edition mod, with and without enemy upscaling enabled. And if that's not enough, I've played the game on Japanese voiceover and even with a new made up character. So no, the chances that you love this game more than me is slim to none. So brew up some coffee, sit up your chair and kick back. Have some trust in judgment of this gorilla. And let me break it down for you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is everything that The Witcher 3 did wrong. Alright, first off let me start with the leveling system of the game. Those of you who played the game multiple times might already know that the biggest problem with the gameplay is not exactly the AI of the enemies or their movement. Well, at least not as much as how the game scales these stats and levels. The game starts relatively difficult up until level 10, but after that the player has the obvious easy choice of over-leveling the enemies and quests. And at the same time not offering any kind of reward for the player taking on a higher level enemy cements this approach even further. Like why would I even try to fight a level 35 fiend if it is not gonna give me any more rewards than killing one as a level 56 demigod? The game doesn't reward the player with a meaningful amount of XP for killing monsters. And after the level 10 hit mark, it bombards you with a lot of different quest lines that pay a huge amount of XP for doing nothing. Oh, and overleveling a quest by 5 levels will result you in getting little to no XP. The natural solution to this would be enabling enemy upscaling, right? You couldn't be more wrong, mate. Enabling the enemy upscaling option will more or less equalize every single enemy you'll face in your journeys. It's all fun and games until you run into a pack of stray dogs that are somehow the same level as you. And now imagine how a level 56 rat would look like. So in this section, the absurd amount of XP given to the players for finishing simple storyline quests, the 5 level limitation on lower level quest lines rendering them essentially pointless to finish for the player. And of course the awful decision of CD Projekt Red to not reward the players for simply killing monsters. All of these major issues render the leveling system of The Witcher 3 an absolute disaster. Something that should be carefully studied and avoided by CD Projekt Red when they are trying to design the next game. Alright, let me say this first. I think signs are the most important combat element in this game. Yes, even more important than sword gameplay. While Yerden is in need against the specters, upgraded art can demolish flying monsters and humans. And Axii remains more or less useless beyond occasional dialogue options, but Quen and Igni can absolutely break the balancing of the gameplay. Like why would you need to invest on a good gear or improve yourself mechanically in dodging attacks when you can simply just Quen the fuck up and Igni the shit out of your enemies? Apart from my few early playthroughs of the game, I've stopped using Quen and Igni altogether, leaving more room for more creative perks and actually taking my time fighting my enemies while worrying about their strikes. You know, the way it should be. You can literally invest all your perk points into Quen and Igni and beat the game without any armor. Or better, just go with a bathrobe or something. A lot of the negative reviews of the game is because of the movement. Now when I was originally playing the game back in 2016, movement wasn't really a problem to me. Yes, Roach could be really annoying at times, and even now I still sometimes get myself in trouble because the game chooses to perform the wrong prompt. But overall, I think a lot of these negative reviews are in direct comparisons to games like Red Dead Redemption and Souls-like games. I remember after experiencing Red Dead Redemption 2, the horse mechanics of The Witcher was extremely annoying to deal with. You had to keep pressing buttons to sprint, Roach would get stuck on random stuff, and overall, it was a really mid experience. Another main cause of the negative reviews for the game was the overall sword combat. In this case, I totally disagree with most of these reviews, as I find the main essence of the sword combat extremely fun and solid. But the problem isn't the sword fighting itself. The problem is the mixture of a few things like the camera positioning and Geralt reacting to aiming with camera, and the targeting going haywire when Geralt is fighting a large group of enemies. If CD Projekt Red just chose the route of being more like Souls-like games, it could actually benefit a lot. Limiting fights to less quantity of enemies but more challenging and creative ones. For example, in the case of Ghost Mode, which is a mod for the game on PC, Ghost Mode doesn't add anything to the game. It simply makes enemies more aggressive and more reactive with dodges and leaps towards Geralt. This shows us that the game itself has every tool it needs in its toolbox for improving the combat system tremendously. Just limit the number of enemies engaging in groups. Make them more aggressive so it opens room for using signs like Yerden or R to slow them down. Unfortunately, Witcher 3 is torn between being an action RPG and a casual hack and slash game. You have all these different mechanics, oils, potions, bombs, signs, but you render most of them useless just because the enemies are not difficult enough. And no, I'm not by any means a Souls-like fan, alright? And I'm not making the argument that The Witcher should be a Souls-like game, but at least improve the scalability of difficulty. Ironically, the name Deathmarch feels more like a walk in the park. Our last and most important aspect that was entirely neglected by CD Projekt Red was preparations. A lot of you probably never thought about this. There are some contracts that you have to do some stuff beforehand in order to prepare yourself for the monster. The most obvious one would be the first official monster contract of the game, the griffin that you must slay for the Nilfgaardians inside the White Orchard in order to get the captain to give you more information about Yennefer. But of course, none of these contracts actually give you the freedom or the option to do the process yourself, or make something more in touch and tangible with the gameplay itself. Like, imagine if every time Geralt wanted to make a potion, he had to make a fire and start the process of mixing herbs himself. Listen, I might be biased a little bit because I have played too much simulator games, but Red Dead Redemption 2 executed this mechanic perfectly. Now, it is really understandable that CD Projekt Red had limited resources back then, but I hope they understand the importance of the collective package of these small details is what makes the game more immersive. It helps a lot with the immersion of the players and feeling like an actual Witcher. If you think it's gonna be too hard for the casual audience, alright, give the casual audience the option to replenish all their potions and bombs simply by consuming an item and meditating, similar to how The Witcher 3 is doing it. But if someone chooses the higher difficulty, change this mechanic to something more survivalist. Dude, it would be such a great feeling to go gather herbs or hunt different monsters for resources and stack on different oils and potions to minimize the risk of getting absolutely crushed by a certain type of enemy. We have a whole Wikipedia-like bestiary in the game talking about different types of monsters and their vulnerabilities, monster contracts that you can haggle with the clients to get a better price. It feels like the whole game was centered around the fact that you need to prepare yourself and make you think ahead before jumping into every fight like a maniac. But the lack of realistic animations, or frankly any kind of tangibility in processing of brewing potions or applying oils or consuming anything, really robs the joy of immersion as a Witcher in this game. I hope CD Projekt Red realizes this untapped potential and take the necessary steps in the future Witcher game to improve on this. And with that, we have reached the end of our video. If you have enjoyed the content enough, become a member. Thanks for watching, and be seeing you.